my playing career, I was obviously still had a pretty high passion for the game of hockey, so I was trying to figure out where my next move would be. Easy transition for me. My brother's a coach as well, so he's the head coach of the Ryerson University right now. He's been there for I think 7 or 8 years now, third or fourth as the head coach, and seem to have turned that program around. So I have a pretty good mentor in him to look up to and ask questions. Um, first year out of the gate, I signed as a player coach in Elmira in the ECHL under a man, Dave Leger. He was with me in Evansville the previous year as a player, so brought me along as a player coach to kind of learn the ropes and help with the video and run the door and things like that. I actually never played any games there. Unfortunately, halfway through the year for him, he was terminated from his contract, which forced me first year into a head coaching general manager role in the ECHL. So pretty wild to be thrown right into the mix early on. And it was head coach first, and then the GM left his role. So it was kind of both thrown at me. Kind of rolled with that. The team then folded. Once again, kind of found myself looking for an opportunity, still had the passion for the game. Reached out to a lot of OHL teams, wanted to come back home and have some grassroots here and build a program that I could work with here. So I signed as an assistant coach, kind of eye in the sky role with Peterborough Petes. Once again, hopefully it wasn't a curse of me, but the head coach was fired. I then got to jump onto the bench and helped run the bench there. Learned a lot from the two coaches, Andrew Werner, Derek Walser, and Jody Hall was the man before. Several years in the NHL between all of them. Learned a lot from them. Was then kind of once again still in the mix. Wanted to find a head coaching role, something a bigger opportunity for myself and my growth. So I had communication with the Okanagan Hockey Group at the OHL Combine here in Whitby, Ontario. And, we liked a lot of what each other were saying, and I liked the premise of the program and the development model. So I jumped on board to be the head coach there last season, this season as well. Still holding a development role with the Peterborough Petes the last 2 seasons. So still in and out, running skates and working with them throughout the draft and stuff. And then now this year, where my role has changed once again, I've landed myself into a head of skill development role for the Okanagan Hockey Group. So overseeing all 5 academies, Penticton, Edmonton, Whitby here in Ontario, Austria, and the UK. So I've been doing a lot of development stuff on the side and in the summers. And as we talked about previously, I started reffing in the American Hockey League 2 seasons ago. So been pretty busy and heavily involved in the hockey world.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're definitely involved and giving back, but also just how many different angles you're giving, especially the refereeing. What a cool story that is too. So yeah, speaking of cool stories, how about you give us some insight in what it was like to sign your NHL contract?
Yeah, so that was a crazy one. Obviously, getting passed up in the NHL draft, the first and second year of eligibility. So I was a little bit, down and out. But I went to the Edmonton Oilers camp the first year of my draft, and then the next year I went back to Edmonton. I felt I was building a pretty good relationship with them. And then the next summer rolled around, and I didn't have any opportunities, and no teams were knocking on my door. So my mindset was, I'm going into my overage year. I don't have a guaranteed spot with 3 players. This might be tough for me right here. Like, even though I had scored 25, 30 goals the previous 3 years, there was Pete Deboer demanded excellence, him and Steve Spott. So they needed to know that I was fully committed and ready to grind it out because we were hosting the Memorial Cup. So I showed up to camp ready to go. The Toronto Maple Leafs, the Florida Panthers, Pittsburgh Penguins, and Ottawa Senators were hosting one of their little rookie showcase style tournaments at the Kitchener Auditorium, where we were hosting our training camp for Kitchener. So one of the players with Florida got injured in practice, the first skate. So the Dwayne Sutter comes over to Pete Deboer and Steve Spott and asked if they had a player that they knew of that could, compete at this level and has experience at NHL camp. So they said my name and came to me and said, Dukes, this is your one shot. We just went to bat for you. You need to prove that you deserve to be there. So I talked to Florida, and they basically said, you're not guaranteed any games. We'll have you pre-game skate and just kind of enjoy the ride. So I said, sure, why not? I'm not losing anything. There's nothing but gain here. So whether it's experience or whatever knowledge they're willing to give me, I took that in stride and got in all 4 games in the rookie tournament. I think I had 5 or 6 fights, 5 to 7 points, and I was noticed every time I stepped on the ice. And being an undersized guy, that's what I was told to do is, you're going to be overlooked for size, but we need you to kind of act big and play big. And that's exactly what I did, and opened up some space for myself. And after that rookie camp, they came to me and said, we'd like you to come to main camp. And I was in shock. Once again, creating an opportunity of virtually nothing, just took advantage of the situation that was provided to me. Went to main camp, played in, I think it was 5 to 7 games that year. Had almost looked like I had a legit shot. And that's the way I felt, and that's the way I played. And once that happened, I unfortunately was sent down to Rochester. That was a split between Buffalo and Florida at the time, so not too many spots available. But at the end of that 2 weeks there, 3 weeks there, they offered me an NHL contract and said it'd be in my best interest to head back to Kitchener and compete for Memorial Cup. So I went back and had an overage spot, and the best year of my career, confidence-wise, playing-wise, and I was mentally in a really good spot.
Yeah, what a cool story. From, like you said kind of from nothing, all of a sudden you got an AHL contract, just working your way, proving basically every day, every practice, every game workout to earn that spot. Very good for the young players to know that consistency is huge. And looking at your stats on Elite Prospects, over 20 goals every year, your final year, over 30 goals, over 20 assists, and over 100 PIMs every year. Yeah, just incredible to kind of look and just, I guess you'd say, speculate what went on during that year. But unbelievable.
The most impressive number on there for me would be the playoffs. So if you looked at my OHL playoffs, I think I had 16 goals in 20 games. And for me, as in the role that I was in and the player that I was, that was almost unbelievable. As a second line on that team, it was me, left wing, Nazem Kadri, center, and Mikhail Bodker on right wing. So I think I had a little bit of help, but at the end of the day, I still had to put them in the net.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no better, you'd agree with me on, in the pro game, it's not just one player, it's that whole line that brings something and knows their role. So, I mean, look at those other 2 players. You got Bodker that brings tremendous speed. You got Kadri that plays that, I don't know what he's like back then, but 2-way game now. I mean, he's a
the exact same way. 2-way, gritty, in your face, skill, would finish hits, did everything from a young age.
And scores goals and puts points on the board. And then you got yourself, probably, who brings more energy, some speed to it. And sometimes those guys have to relieve pucks for these other players, skilled players as well.
I'd like to think I just opened up a little bit of ice for them and gave them some more room.
Yeah, exactly that. And brought the toughness. I'm sure you had to scrap a few times when maybe some of the opposing teams would finish their hits on these superstars in the OHL or even your team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a Sportsnet game, and I really wanted to make an example and show that I'd stick up for these guys. And Anthony Peluso pulled me out of a pile and just beat the wheels off of me. So I think I learned my lesson after that one.
Yeah, those are the perfect ones too. The TV games, everyone sees who you are. And like, oh, that was a great fight and all that. But it's also a learning point for these kids that fighting is it's less in today's game, but it still happens. And if you show up to the fight, that's the number one. If you lose the fight, it's shake it off and you move on. It's just showing up to the fight and willing to not only defend yourself but defend your teammates and be there for the team.
Yeah, luckily on Elite Prospects, it doesn't show my win percentage of fights.
Yeah, that's good. So I mean, I'm sure there's other websites where they show all the videos and all that, or they used to, the hockeyfights.com or whatever.
Yeah, I think I used to go on dropyourgloves.com all the time. I think it doesn't exist anymore, though. That was the best.